my depression was because I wasn't interacting with my family the way a father should or a husband should. You can't. You just can't. You can't teach your son how to ride a bike, play basketball, or to throw a baseball. Can't go horseback riding with your daughter, who's very good at horseback riding, and she always wanted me to go horseback riding with her. I would take her to stables where she could ride, and boy, when I would drive up and get out of the car, the horses would get all nervous. I'm serious. The horses would see me come and go, whoa, wait a minute, buddy. This is not rawhide. We're not going to play this game. But I will tell you what rock bottom was for me. The crazy thing was that I always believed that eventually I would lose the weight. Tomorrow, it's only a Twinkie away. And that's not what happened. Welcome to the first episode of the Phoenix Chronicles. My name is Martin Crow, and I used to weigh 660 pounds. After losing 450 pounds so far, I've got about 30 more to lose. My government was kind enough to take away my zip code and give me back my social security number, so I have that going for me.
That's good.
Yeah, well, it's true. When you're past 600 pounds, you become more of a place than a person. But anyway. We're really glad that you could be here today. Want to share with you in this first episode how I discovered a way to peacefully and calmly and easily lose weight and keep it off. And I can tell you that my journey was long, it was hard, but as I came to the final realization that by working with God, I could worship into weight loss. And that's what we've really learned how to do, is worship into weight loss. And we're going to share with you exactly how we can do that for you. And Jes, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Jes Dismang. I am Martin's daughter. I am at the beginning of my journey, so we're kind of in very different places. I have struggled with my weight my whole life, and similarly, through trial and error, realized my missing piece was God.
Right.
That was the missing thing for me, and I am at the beginning of my process. Watching you have your success has been great inspiration for me. And I'm really excited to dive into the topics we're going to talk about and to share a process and the learning curve that we're having I'm still kind of going through the beginning of mine, but I'm excited.
It's an exciting time, and we're really glad you could be here with us. And, one of the first questions that people ask me is, how in the world did you ever weigh 660 pounds? And the answer to that is embarrassing, because obviously I had to eat out of my mind. And Jessica, you saw me do that. Growing up in our home, you saw me do things like this. And it was not unusual for me to order a pan pizza that was this big and this big, just a whole pan pizza. And along with that pan pizza, they gave you 50 wings. This is in upstate New York. It was one of the specialities of upstate New York pizza ordering. And I felt it was my duty to eat the whole bloody thing, And I let you guys have a few slices here and there, but basically I ate the whole thing. And I might order that 2 or 3 times a week for my dinner. But that was, that would be bad enough. But that wasn't the only thing I was doing. I was eating more than dinner. I would go out. Typically, my pattern was that I would start off with a breakfast at home that my wife had made me, a good diet breakfast, because she was always helping me lose weight. And I would take that diet breakfast and I would eat it, a few soft-boiled eggs, 1 slice of toast, dry, cup of coffee, and I was on my way. But on my way to work, I stopped at McDonald's and caught myself a few breakfast sandwiches and enjoyed them, had the hash browns as well, and milk to wash it down. And then I would stop off at the gas station to get gas, and had to go into the gas station, of course, because I wanted to get a candy bar or 2 or 5 to put in my desk drawer that I would have for the rest of the day. And then I would show up at work and work around my deal, having pieces of candy as I would do it. The other thing I would do is I would get a 2-liter bottle of Dr. Pepper, not Diet Dr. Pepper, Dr. Pepper. And I would have 2 to 4 of those a day, every day. I drank the whole thing, 4 of these 2-liter bottles. And then I would go to lunch. And typically when I would go to lunch, I would always have a business meeting. But as I approached the menu, I didn't do like most people approach a menu. Most people approach a menu and say, what sounds good? I didn't do that. I looked at the menu and said, how can I get as much food as I can for the least amount of money? What's the offering on this menu that gives me the biggest volume of food? And that's what I ordered. And I would usually order side products with it. For example, if it was a half of a chicken, I would order extra mashed potatoes and gravy. If it was a breakfast that I would eat for lunch, I would get a great big omelet and some hash browns and then order a side order of biscuits and gravy. I would just really load up with carbs and all kinds of food. And then I would go back to the office, have a few more bottles of Dr. Pepper, a few more candy bars. And then I also had to always have my mid-afternoon snack.
What was that?
Typically a pizza, a large pizza. And I would eat that whole thing. I would eat on that till I went home for dinner. And somebody said, you already had pizza once today. How could you order more? There's never enough pizza. You always have to have pizza because it keeps you fueled and informed. And that's what I did. I did that until I'd go home and have a huge pizza. And if I didn't have pizza, order a bucket of chicken. And this is in upstate New York when I was at my worst. And there was just you and me and Mom. You were a young girl. And I would order a complete bucket of chicken, which typically for most households lasts a while. Not in our house. I had that chicken bucket finished off, and I would order extra mashed potatoes and gravy. I'd order special mashed potatoes, like 2 complete big cupfuls of mashed potatoes and gravy just for me, and then you guys had your little one. And I typically finished yours off too. So I was eating huge volumes of food and doing it every day, day after day after day after day. And that's how you get up to the point that you weigh 660 pounds.
So that was the food. What was your life like?
Pretty miserable. I mean, basically, I was in pain all the time. My knees killed me. I had to have 2 knees replaced this year because I wiped my knees out with my obesity. My back was always in pain. Now, I need to say that as a 660-pound man, I never laid in bed and asked people to feed me. I got up every day and went to work.
Yep, you did.
I actually went to the gym every day and got in the jacuzzi. And I conned myself into believing I was doing exercise by sitting in a jacuzzi with webbed gloves and moving my hands back and forth in the water, saying, well, here I'm getting cardiovascular done. I'm working out, which I wasn't. I was just enjoying the hot water. And I did that for years, but I didn't just lay at home. I was up and working. I would work all week long, 5 days a week, from morning to night. But boy, when I came home on Friday night, I collapsed. I literally just exhausted, would eat my dinner and go up to bed, go to sleep at 7 o'clock at night. And the only thing I would wake up for is to go to the bathroom and to get more food. Whenever I woke up to get to the bathroom, I had to go grab some more food. And that's what I did for a long time while I was working in this process of just getting fatter and fatter and fatter. And emotionally, I was depressed all the time. My depression was because I wasn't interacting with my family the way a father should or a husband should. You can't. You just can't. You can't teach your son how to ride a bike. You can't teach your son how to play basketball or to throw a baseball. You can't go horseback riding with your daughter, who's very good at horseback riding, and she always wanted me to go horseback riding with her. And I would take her to stables where she could ride, and boy, when I would drive up and get out of the car, the horses would get all nervous. I'm serious. The horses would see me coming and go, whoa, wait a minute, buddy. This is not rawhide. We're not going to play this game. And I'd say, no, I'm just here to watch her ride. And somehow the horses understood, it felt like, because they calmed down when I said, no, I'm not riding, it's not me. But ultimately, there came a point where I reached rock bottom.
Yeah.
And how come it took weighing 660 pounds to reach rock bottom is a mystery to me. I don't know why. But I will tell you what rock bottom was for me. It wasn't being overweight. The crazy thing was that I always believed that eventually I would lose the weight. And I kept using the idea of tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. In fact, I had a mantra, tomorrow, I didn't doubt that ultimately one day I would actually lose weight. But that's not what happened. What happened that scared me was I developed a real bad case of diabetes. Now, why weight loss didn't scare me, but diabetes did scare me. Diabetes terrified me. I was well aware of the fact that people who have diabetes face real challenges. Now, there's people who have diabetes that manage it beautifully, but I knew my habits. I knew my pattern. I knew that if I had diabetes, I'd be grabbing a Snickers bar anyway. I would not be disciplined to the point that I would be correctly eating food and taking care of myself. I knew I would be one of the bad diabetics. And so it scared me. Because of that, I knew that my potential for blindness, my potential for fingers and toes and feet and legs being amputated, they were real. And the other diseases that came along with a bad case of diabetes were real, including heart disease. And now that scared me. That caused me to say, well, wait a minute, I could die from this. I didn't really think of that before. Because one of the reasons I didn't, when I was at my heaviest, my blood pressure was 120/80. Go figure. I mean, doctors couldn't believe it. When I was at my heaviest, I had low triglycerides. I had no bad cholesterol. I had no high cholesterol. I had no high blood pressure. And so because I had this good cardiovascular system, I thought that I was immune from really having anything that typically you think of when people think about having fatal issues with their weight. I didn't worry about it until they developed this diabetes. And the diabetes was a real bad case. My blood sugar, when they finally found out about it, was 650. They had to put me in the hospital for 3 days and by using insulin shots, they got my blood sugar count down to around 100. And that's when I was really at the point that I recognized that I had to do something about it. And that was my first decision. That was the first decision I made to actually do something about it. Somebody asked me, where did the rubber meet the road? Well, it was at that point. And it terrified me. And I want to help people so they don't have to get to that terrifying point. I want to show people that they can actually lose weight and keep it off without having to reach the ultimate challenge of something like diabetes or a heart attack. I was very fortunate that my numbers were good, but not everybody has that fortune. And being overweight, being obese is definitely a challenge on the heart. I know eventually my heart would have said, you know what, I don't care what your numbers are, I give up. I'm done pumping blood to this huge body. You're going to have to do something different, or I'm going to die. And because of all this is how I developed the journey, the Phoenix Chronicles. Because what I did was I started losing weight by having a bariatric bypass surgery to start. I lost some weight with that, but then it stopped, the magic stopped, and I started to gain it back. And I realized I had to do it the old-fashioned way. I had to diet. I had to change my life. I had to change everything about my life. And by using sheer willpower, I did that for many, many years. But it was so stressful. You lived in my house.
Yeah.
The stress of our house was like they said you could cut the atmosphere with a knife. It was just palatable, the frustration and anger I felt. Now, people had weight issues, but they didn't have horrible weight issues. And I would watch other people eat things that I just couldn't eat. And that made me angry. That term hangry, I was hangry all the time. And I was stressed out all the time until I came to the point that I surrendered my entire weight loss story to God.
That's the turning point.
That was the turning point. And I said, you know what? If you want me to be this 370-pound man, because that's what I had gotten down to, is about 370 pounds. If you want me to be this 370-pound guy, God, okay, fine, I'll be that. I don't want to be that, but if that's what you want me to be, I'll be that. And when I surrendered my will to God's will for my life, something amazing began to happen. I started to feel peace about it. I started to look at food as something I needed to live on rather than something I wanted to have and crave. And I still had to be on a diet. I still had to do the things, but I wasn't using willpower anymore. Or at least I wasn't using my will. I was using God's willpower. And that sounds like it's a mystical thing to happen, but it's not. It's real. It's palatable. It actually develops in you this ability to say, I'm going to change my life, and it's going to be easy because I'm going to do it with God. And that's what I did. I decided to change my life and do it with God. And that's what we want to show you how to do. It's not just something that's ethereal. It's a real process. It's a step-by-step process we can teach you how to do, to go about the process of doing the same thing in your life, and to make it easy for you to do, make it stress-free for you to do. And here's the key. Not only will you lose weight, you'll keep it off. Because that's the real key to a diet. It's not just whether you lose weight. It's if you can keep it off for the rest of your life. And we can show you exactly how to do that.
I'm excited. I've seen the transformation happen in you, Dad, over the last several years, and particularly because I've seen the process, and in the last few years, the transition that happened, I would say, between angst, where it's like everything was about staying perfect on the diet and doing things right, but there was so much stress and like turmoil and difficulty and lack with that process. And then the transition that happened where it was about surrendering and obedience to what God was calling you to do. And then the peace that washed over. And there wasn't that difficulty. So yeah, I'm in a very different part of my process. I also struggled with my weight. Since I was a kid. I remember being in the doctor's office when I was 10 years old, and I was with Mom. It was just like a physical checkup, and the doctor was like, "Well, we want to start having her go on a diet because she's overweight." And I remember looking down at myself and thinking, like, what's wrong with me? I don't feel that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do I look funny? Like, it didn't register for me as a little 10-year-old. And looking back at pictures of myself when I was 10, I wasn't that overweight. I was a little chunky maybe, but I just remember that developing this stigma in me about my body, and that there was something wrong with me very young. And then growing up in our household, it was all about food all the time, whether that was a positive view of food or a negative view of food. It was either a celebratory, indulgent, nice thing that I do for myself, or it's like almost like a punishment. Like when it was in diet mode, it was a very negative thing. There was no view of food in a positive way. And it's because we didn't want to do the diet foods. We didn't want to do the diet things. It was hard. I think I found lots of different things to try over the years. We all did, kind of as a family. Through high school and college, I had lost weight and gotten down to a normal, like a healthy weight. I had done some techniques and strategies to lose weight that weren't healthy for my body or my mind, but they had achieved the goal that I had set for myself, which was to weigh a certain number on this scale or to be in a certain size clothes, something along those lines. And I maintained to that through college and through getting married. And then things kind of started to turn for me. In 2009, I started gaining weight, and I couldn't explain it. I couldn't control it. The numbers were going up on the scale despite how perfect I was being on my diet, but despite how clean I was eating. I was doing Muay Thai in the gym for like 3 hours a day. I was killing myself to get control over my body, and I couldn't. And I had these other symptoms happening at the same time, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. I was in the doctor's office all the time. About a year of blood work and testing, I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome, hypothyroidism, and I have a tumor on my pituitary gland. All of this made a beautiful hormonal crazy storm in my body. And the result of me not feeling like I had control over my body at that point, I developed like an eating disorder because I was trying so desperately to have control over something that I couldn't really control. This struggle with control, I guess, really rooted, derooted? Unrooted? I don't know.
Whatever you want to say.
Uprooted.
There you
That's
go.
the
That's it. Uprooted.
It uprooted this realization. Like I had this realization that this inner struggle about control led to my security or safety. So when I didn't have control, or my perceived control, I didn't feel safe. So I was on this like mission. I continued to gain weight, and with that, self-hatred, criticism. I was really hard and unkind to myself about this issue that I had, this problem that I struggled with. And then I would say in 2020, I had an identity crisis. Who didn't in 2020, right? Like 2020 was pretty insane for everybody. The pandemic was happening. Ironically, my identity crisis was not related to the pandemic or COVID or anything that was happening. It just kind of coincidentally coincided at that time. And I started doing some work with a Christian therapist, and I realized in this identity that I had built around food, it just crumbled for me. It all came crashing down. Everything that I had built my identity and my security and my safety on was gone. And I realized in that moment that I had made food an idol in my life. It was the thing I thought about when I woke up and before I went to bed. What was I going to eat? When was I going to eat? Where was I going to eat? How much could I eat? It was the way I made myself feel safe or loved or secure, you name it. It was God in my life. And when I realized this, I was like I was blown away and relieved, but I was also like, oh my goodness, this means I got a lot of work ahead of me. I have a lot of scary work ahead of me. Being raised in the church, I knew that nothing is supposed to come before God in our lives. And if I had made this thing that was so important to me, more important than God, and I had to surrender it, that was terrifying.
Yeah.
Terrifying for me. So I started the process, and I wish I could say that I got it like you did. When you went through the process and you realized you needed to surrender your food issues and your challenges to God and your addiction to God, it clicked for you, and you've been able to surrender that to God. And I mean, there's been struggles. There's been there's that inner turmoil that happens for sure. But I wish I could have got it as quickly as you. I'm in the process still. I have learned about myself that, for better or worse, mostly worse, I am incredibly stubborn, and I am stubborn with God. I have a really hard time surrendering. It's something I work on daily, and I have seen him do incredible things working in me. I open the door and I invite him in, and then I kind of panic and I'm like, oh, nope, wait, I'm not ready. I'm going to need you to hold on a second. So I have, it's been a push and a pull, a back and a forth. You know, they say recovery isn't a straight line. It's not even a wavy line. It's not even like one step forward, two steps back. It's like a labyrinth. So there's turns. Sometimes there's just straight roadblocks, and you just run into a wall and you have no choice but to turn around and go back and try something else. That's been my experience anyways. So where I'm at now, I'm at the most unhealthy I've ever been. I'm at the highest weight I've ever been. This is a really vulnerable weight for me to meet you, because I'm kind of coming in at the very beginning of my story. I don't have many successes to report yet, but I'm excited to share them as we go along in this process.
Right.
I have faith in God, and I trust him, and I know I'm on the right path when I'm turning to him first for my guidance, and that includes my struggle with food. So I'm at the beginning. Dad has had beautiful success, and we're going to be able to share a lot of our process with you along the way.
Yeah, that's great, Jessica. And I got to say that one of the things I noticed about my attempts to lose weight when I was using just willpower, it was all about me.
Yeah.
It's centered about me. And then when I turned and surrendered it over to God, it's all about God. And that, That makes such a huge difference in everything that we do.
Absolutely. It shifts when it's not on my power, when I don't feel like I have it to give, and then I realize that it's God's power, that God is going to give me the strength. That's, I think, where that peace comes from.
Yeah,
Because it's not on my power, because I don't have it. I do not have it. But God does.
So let's take a break right now, Jessica. Want to take some time here. And when we come back, we're going to talk about how the journey works and how it can work for you. So we're going to take a break now. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
Welcome back. Thank you for coming back with us. We took a short break, but we are going to continue on talking now specifically more about the specifics about the program, the journey. So, Dad, can you dive in deeper for us about
I'll
the
be
program?
glad to do that. And what I want to tell you is that I took a break and I didn't have a donut, which is a good thing because that was my past break-taking process, or a pizza, whatever was available. But I had nothing, and I had a cup of coffee and enjoyed that, and I'm good to go. So an overview of what the journey is really simply a practical approach to daily worship. You know, you could walk away from this and say, well, if I just pray about things, and that I agree, you should pray about things, but we have a specific planned approach to your journey that will show you exactly what to do. And what that means is you're going to do daily worship. You're going to worship into weight loss. And how you do that is you block out a piece of time every day, and I mean every day. And I know we're all busy. I understand that we're all busy, but you can take 15 to 30 minutes a day, block it out, whatever works for you. 15 minutes gets it done for you, that's all. And take that time every day to spend time in prayer, specifically about what you're trying to accomplish, specifically asking for God's guidance, specifically asking for God to bless you indeed, to specifically ask in that prayer for Him to be with you throughout the day. And it's something you do all day long.
Yeah.
You know, that I never understood the concept of praying without ceasing until I did this program, because we have a lot of idle times during the day, every day, and you're sitting there and you're not really thinking about anything, and you're confronted with a donut in front of you. You go to a meeting and they have donuts there for you, and you've done great on your diet, but those donuts are calling your name, and that's time for a prayer. Say, God, right now, be with me, guide me, be my strength, be my fortitude, be my steadfastness, and keep me from doing something I'm going to regret later. And you pray about it day long, all day long. The second thing you do is you get into the Word. You know, it's one thing to pray, and that's very important because we talk to God that way. But the other side of that is to hear God's voice talking to you.
Exactly.
And you know, somebody asks, is God still revealing truth today? Well, as you read the Bible and you take in things you hadn't thought about before, you have daily revelations from God as if He wrote it just specifically for you that day. We were at our church service on Sunday, and the pastor got up and gave a wonderful lesson, and we were just shocked because it's everything we had been talking about. It's like he had come to our house, listened to our conversation, and wrote the entire sermon for us. It was unbelievable how it applied to the very things we're doing right now and the things we're dealing with right now to launch this podcast and our website and our book. And we really were amazed at that. And so even though the pastor had no idea about what we were going through, it was a revelation to us. It was absolutely powerful to us in every way. And the third part of the journey is to worship. And what I mean by worship is, I mean really here's what I do. I take my cell phone out, these amazing computers we have in our hands right now that we can do so many things on. Well, one of the things I do is I go to Amazon Music, where I've created a list. Jessica went to Spotify and did the same thing. We created a worship list. And so I'll sit there and I'll be praying and I'll be reading the Bible, and then I'll go into a period of time of worship. And in that worship, I just turn my phone on, push a button, and before you know it, CeCe Winans is singing to me. It's like she's singing, just her and I, we're just worshiping together. And it's a marvelous, powerful thing that helps me really focus on the goal that I have, because it is a big goal. This is not easy to do. But the worship makes it far easier to do that. And so when you have that opportunity to worship, you worship. And here's what I mean by worship. You don't just sit there and listen to the words, you sing. I don't have a great voice. I used to have a great voice. No, not a great voice. I used to have a reasonable voice. And as I've gotten older, I stopped singing. And anyway, the bottom line is, it doesn't matter what you sound like.
Nope, the Bible says make a joyful noise unto the Lord.
Yeah, and it's a real noise when I do
noise.
it. Yeah, it's a real noise when I do it. But I do it. I do it every morning. For me personally, I get up early in the morning and do it because I start my day that way. And that might not work with your schedule. My wife is the opposite. She does it at night. You can do it anytime. You can take your lunch break. You can make it your lunch break. Just taking a specific time every day that works for you to pray, to get into the Word, and to worship. By going back to getting into the Word, take a small section of Scripture and really develop it and really devour it. You don't just sit there and read to read. It's not a matter of saying, well, I read for 10 minutes in the Bible today. Well, what did you get out of it? Well, I don't really remember because I was just reading to read. That's not the point. Like right now I'm in Romans, the 8th chapter, where it talks about we're more than conquerors. And I read it over and over again. I've done it for days. And by the time I'm done doing it with this particular scripture, I'm going to have that in my soul, in my heart. I've been in Ephesians where it talks about the whole armor of God. I've done that. And I practically memorized it without meaning to memorize it because I've read it over and over and over again. So those are the scriptures that are modeling, or I'm modeling those scriptures in my daily life. And how does that have anything to do with weight loss? Here's what it has to do with weight loss. You are surrendering your entire will to God.
Yeah.
And that's where the weight loss will happen. And the final thing I do with this worship process is I make a commitment to God every day what I'm going to do that day. I'm very specific. I know exactly what I need to eat today to maintain a weight loss program. So I will begin by saying, God, this is what I'm doing right now because it works for me. I intermittent fast. And so when I intermittent fast, I say, well, God, I'm going to get up in the morning, I'm going to have my coffee. I'm not going to eat anything for breakfast. I'm not going to eat anything for lunch. And for dinner, I'm going to have a specific thing. Now, sometimes I have a meal replacement shake that I get from Arbonne that really helps me do that. Other times I'll have a small meal, a protein-based meal. Right now I'm doing the carnivore meal, which is high protein, high fat, but I'm staying away from all carbs in every way. Now that's what I say I'm going to do that day. And I commit not only to myself that, I commit it to God. Now, you want to have a diet buddy?
There's no better diet buddy than God.
Yeah, you can't cheat on. Yeah, he's there.
He knows.
He knows. You can't get away from that. And it keeps me on task, and it keeps me absolutely on top of what it is I'm trying to do. So that's what we do in the process of the daily worship.
You may have come here for, I don't know what reason you've come here, how much weight you want to lose, or you'll notice we're not telling you what to eat.
Right.
We're not telling you X, Y, and Z. We're a companion to whatever diet program you want to use, what one works for your body, what one your doctors are directing you to use. Dad and I do very different plans. We have different bodies, so depending on what we need to do for our health, we address more the spiritual side of this battle and the surrender of the idol or the addiction. That's what we're here to help you with. We'll talk about different programs and things that work or things that have not worked for us over the years because we've tried it all.
Yes.
But we are talking more about the heart issue, your soul stance. That's what the journey is.
It really is. And so I use the example and I ask people, if you could pick a diet that works for you, that works for your body, and you know it works for you and your body, if you were absolutely disciplined and stayed on that diet 100%, would you lose weight? And the answer is yes, you would. If you have the diet that works with your body, works with your system, and you stay true to it. So what's the key to staying true to the diet? It's the mental part. It's the heart part. It's the mental and the spiritual. And that's what we focus on. That's beautifully said. We're a companion to diets. We're not a diet, but we're going to help you pick the diet that works for you and keep you on that diet until you've reached the level of success you need to reach. You know, that's the really bottom line of the whole process, is that you want to stay on a diet that works for you. So not only after you're done dieting, you keep the weight off. Because what's the good of dieting if you're going to gain it all back? And you usually gain back more. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to have 2 or 3 different sizes in your closet because of where you're at on your diet streak. Because when I've lost weight, I've thrown away my clothes that are bigger. I've given so many things to Goodwill, and funny thing is, I've lost weight kind of rapidly doing this, and so I'll buy a pair of jeans that 6 weeks later I give away, and they're practically brand new jeans, but I'm giving them away to Goodwill because I can't wear them anymore, and I'm not going to keep them in my closet as a backup to if I gain weight. I know I'm not going to gain weight. I know that wherever I reach, that's the lowest I'm going to be, and all it's going to be is a lower pair of pants for me, a smaller pair of pants for me. It's not going to be a bigger pair of pants. It's not going to be a larger size shirt. It's going to be a smaller size shirt. And I keep that in mind and do that. And you can have that same success, that same confidence, and that same peace that goes about doing this with by making you not the center of the diet equation, but letting God and His will be the center of the diet equation. So that's really what the journey is. Now, there's a lot more to it, and we're going to get more in-depth in that. We'll be more in-depth in that on our website. It's more in-depth in our book, A Phoenix Chronicle. And there will be more that we will share with you on our podcast through the days and through the weeks and years that we work through this process together. But once you come to the point you've lost all your weight, do you stop using the Phoenix Chronicles? Do you stop using the journey? No. Now it's about keeping it off. And that's the real key, is keeping it off so you never have to fall back into the problems and struggles again. One of the things I want to share with you, we're going to be giving scriptures every time we get together, because the scriptures, as I said, were in the Word. And the overriding scripture that we fall back on, and we will continually fall back on, is Romans, the 12th chapter, verses 1 and 2. And in that verse it says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers, to offer your body a living sacrifice to God, which is your spiritual worship, and no longer conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so you can test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will." Here's what that means, and here's what it means for us. You know, this scripture has been used for thousands of years by people to transform their lives. Isn't it amazing to think that your life can be transformed by the renewing of your mind? You call it changing your mind, or taking a different perspective, changing your paradigm, however you want to call it. It's about changing the way you think about things. And that process can be really accommodated in the fastest and most productive way by offering your body a living sacrifice to God. Now, how do I offer my body a living sacrifice to God? Do I punish myself or hurt myself? Now, how do I do it, Jessica?
Surrendering your idol is a way that I think of it.
It's a big way.
So for me, like food. So my will would be to. So you talked about volume. Mine has my challenge with food has been more about indulgence. Like what's the perfect thing, like my special treat or something like that. So for me, it would be surrendering that desire I have for that indulgence and that treating myself. Sacrificing that and saying, this, if I actually went through with it, the act of that is not honoring to my body.
Right.
It, in long term, has caused damage to my body. I'm having all sorts of health issues right now because of the choices that I had made in the past. So for me, that would be a sacrifice to me, to surrender that and to say, I'm going to obey what I believe God is calling me to do, which is to fuel my body from a state of health. And it's having me respect my body in a way that I have not in the past.
You know, another way you can look at surrender or sacrifice. So I go on a diet and deny myself the foods I like. That's a sacrifice.
Yeah.
And so I look at just being on a diet as a sacrifice. So when I offer my body a living sacrifice, just like what Jessica said, surrendering herself, but just being on a diet is a sacrifice. And by doing that, God will transform you by the renewing of your mind. He'll change your mind. You'll change your mind with God. And it's a very powerful thing that happens. Now, people have been using this method, as I said, for years to transform their lives in many different ways.
And for all different kinds
All
of
different
things.
kinds of reasons. And I, as a Christian, have used it for other things. But it wasn't until I got involved with really surrendering to God and recognized that I could use the same scripture very powerfully to change my mind, to change the way I think about food. And that's what's happened to me. And so from that standpoint, it's kind of transformational. It's something that's new. I wouldn't call it revolutionary, but I would call it a new application to this scripture that has not been used before. And that very real application is an application that can absolutely change your life. And so with that, we want to thank you for joining us on our first episode of the Phoenix Chronicles. We hope you'll come back. We hope you'll tell people about it. How can they find us, Jessica?
Yeah, you can check out our website, thephoenixchronicles.com. We'd love for you to give us feedback there. If you go down on the homepage, you scroll down a bit, we have a form you can fill out where you can ask us questions or topics, and we would love to engage with you. That's part of the passion that Dad and I want. We have talked about these topics in our living room for
years,
near a decade, I think, as we've both been kind of uncovering this process. And we want the Phoenix, like this podcast, to feel like an extension of that. Like, we're still in our living room, but you're just here with us. So we would love to engage with you about that. And then you can also get more information about what the program is. You can check out my dad's book, A Phoenix Chronicle. And we have other resources and support on the website as well.
Yeah, we do. And we're looking forward to sharing those resources with you. And so with that in mind, thank you for coming and being with us on this first episode. We really appreciate your time. Hope you enjoyed it. We enjoyed giving it to you. And look forward to seeing you again on another episode of the Phoenix Chronicles. Have a great day.